Okay, well, I'm here to read a story of my mom's. It's called Our Romance. It's the story of my mom and my dad and how they got together. And ultimately, it's really about the creation of me. And so, when I'm reading this, that's kind of a important thing to remember that in the end, it's really all about me. And so, which that's kind of I we need to recognize this thing. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to read it. This is I'm just reading what it says here, and you can decide for yourself the real hidden interpretation behind all this. Okay, so here we are, November 30th, 2014. Remember, I'm reading my mom's thing. This is not me. This is my mom. A brief history of our early relationship memories to our amazing kids. Amazing. Remember that part. Last night, your dad came up to me and said with a cute little smile, "We've been together for 50 years." I was so surprised that he remembered that we spent all of our free time together by early November 1964. He is so sweet and romantic. I'm still amazed by his love for me. Romantic. Remember that part. It's going to be important later on. Because you are planning an anniversary party for us, I thought that you might like to know something about how we met in the months leading up to our wedding. So I will attempt to write some background along with our combined memories of some dating highlights. Background. Because your grandmother was our matchmaker, I think it'd be helpful to give you some background on how my life intersected with Mr. and Mrs. Kimes. Just to clarify, Mr. and Mrs. Kimes, my mom's not talking about her. She's talking about my grandmother Nana, uh, uh, and and then her. So that's Juanita Kimes and Jean Kimes. So that's who my mom was talking about there. Dad and I grew up in neighboring cities, Huntington Park and Walnut Park. We attended the same high school, although not at the same time. Dad graduated the year before I arrived as a freshman. I was introduced to Jean Kimes as a child. My family frequented a Texaco service station owned by Bill, Jean, and Dean. I remember well that Jean always filled the car with gas, checked under the hood, washed all the outside windows, and then finished by washing the inside windshield. That was pretty impressive, even to a kid. I'll tell you, today that'd be really impressive too. Can you imagine somebody going and doing that and washing, coming and doing that? You go to the self-service station, you're pumping up, they say, "Hey, I'd like to check under the hood, check your oil, do the thing. Oh, let me climb into your car and wash the inside. Let me get on top of your children so that way we can wash the inside." Man, everybody had noticed that. In high school, everyone knew Mrs. Kimes. She worked in the school business office, so if you wanted to buy tickets to a football game, dance, and snacks, or order class pictures or yearbooks, you had a face-to-face with Mrs. Kimes. I always loved my grandmother. My grandmother, I mean, she's like one of my favorite persons growing up. But looking back, I could see that if I was doing a face-to-face with Mrs. Kimes for just about anything, I think I might be a little nervous. Not my grandmother, but Mrs. Kimes. Yeah, I'd be nervous about her. As a junior, I took a work experience class assignment in the business office. Mrs. Kimes was who I reported to and received assignments from. At the end of the quarter, she gave me an A on my report card and a recommendation for a job working for a CPA for class credit. I also had indirect contact with Mr. and Mrs. Kimes because they were active in Masons and Eastern Star, and I was active in Job's Daughters from the age of 12 to 16. Although I do not remember seeing them at various functions, I am sure that our paths overlap. At 16 or 17 years old, I was honored Queen of Job's Daughters, and that was the same time frame that I had more contact with Mrs. Kimes at school. I'm sure she was aware of my position in Job's Daughters. As an aside, your dad was the former master counselor of Demole and then became a Mason by the time that we met. So these are all Mason Freemason type organizations that they were involved in and connected. This is very important because we see that with that A and with the connections and my mom being honored as queen, that these were really important. These are things that my grandmother saw as being good things in my mom. Next section, the matchmaker at work. Never mind. There was a Mason's Night function at a Job's Daughters meeting, and as Junior past honored queen, I felt I should go. As Dad remembers it, his mom suggested that he attended the meeting. Sneaky grandma. This is not something that he would think of doing on his own, but he went because his mom asked him to. The plot thickens. I think we happened to see each other before the meeting, and Mrs. Kimes introduced us. Your dad remembers what I wore, a tan sheath with cream-colored heels, and having a guy response when we met. A guy response. On the surface, I would like to say, okay, this is what a guy response is, but the more that I think about it, and the more that I think that maybe my dad might actually be watching this video, I think I'm not gonna go there. I think I'm not gonna make a guess as to what my mom meant by guy response. Tan sheath with cream colored. Wow. No, we're not going there. I think that is so amazingly cute. My mom thinks the guy response is really cute. Wow. My mom. She's way more open-minded than I ever thought she was. Okay. After the meeting, we were all out on Pacific Avenue to get into our cars when Mrs. Kimes started a conversation. She mentioned how they received my brother's wedding invitation, but she and Mr. Kimes were unable to attend. But Jerry should go. Now, Jerry's my dad, okay? Some people call him John, some people call him Jerry, but that's my dad. But Jerry should go and represent the family. Oh, Jerry, you go ahead and go. Go ahead. Go to Susie's brother's wedding. That would be a great idea. However, he didn't really know anybody there, so would I be willing to be his plus one? So my grandma set up a date between my mom and dad. Okay, all right. I agreed and plans were made. The unexpected surprise for Jerry was that when, on the way home, he asked his mom how old I was, and she told him I was 17. He thought I was older. Now we know that my dad's really a cradle robber. I find out more and more about my family. This is scary. Jim and Pam's wedding was October 17th, 1964. Dad, Jerry and I met after the wedding. Our plan was to go to a playoff football game at East LA College and then attend the wedding reception at my house. By the time that we got to the game, it was over, so off we went to the reception. Once we arrived, Dad insisted Jerry have a drink. Now, this is my Papa Steve, my mom's dad, grandfather on my mom's side. And it doesn't surprise me. Early times, he recalled with distaste. So early times is a kind of Scotch. I specifically asked my dad about this. I guess early times is a kind of cheap Scotch. I do remember Papa Steve liked his Scotch, so that makes sense. We didn't stay in the house for long. Instead, now what was he thinking? Papa Steve is thinking, hey, we'll get this young man drunk and then I'll send him off with my daughter. Wow. Okay. Well, it's a strange family. Okay. We did not stay in the house for long. Instead, we went out to Jerry's car to talk and learn about each other. This is getting creepy, guys. This is definitely, what kind of learning is going on here? Guys, come on. All right. I don't know how long we talked, but it was time for Jerry to go, and he leaned over and kissed me. Oh, how sweet. And then he got out of the car and came over to my side to open my door. Well, that was it. Deal was set. I was basically destined to exist from that moment on. Opening the opening the door. Oh, man. I thought about him during the week. Yeah, I bet you did. And decided I would probably not go out with him again. Oh. He was 22, and that seemed old to me. 22 is old. You were 17. I mean, this is possibly a legal matter. What is the statute of limitations here? Am I even legal? Oh my goodness. Also, he seems so responsible. Oh, because that's a big turnoff. Don't want to be responsible. Much rather have a party guy. He was in college, smart, and thinking about a job and his future versus a guy who surfs, parties, and never talked about the future. Can you imagine if that was our kind of dad? You know, the guy who surfed and partied and never talked about the future? I think we would all be very different people now. However, he didn't call me for 2 weeks, and I thought that he wasn't going to call for a second date. No one had ever done that before, because my mom was quite the looker. I mean, she had the hair. I mean, it's just like every week, new hairdo, and she was just like, she had all this hair. She could always do something with it. It was kind of like Felix's bag of tricks. And then, poof, amazing hairdo. And everyone's just like, oh, that's the girl. That's the one that I want to go out with. But my dad, he's just like, yeah, no. Let her cool for a while. Let's see what happens with this. No, we're going to play hard to get. That's what we're going to do. So now, my mom says, I became interested in him. Whew, it worked. Yes, Dad. When he finally called me to go out the next weekend, I was eager to be with him again. Yeah, keeping the distance, building up the what do you call that? Oh man, I can't remember now. Anyway, I could come up with a synonym, but they wouldn't be as nice. Okay. When he finally called me out the next weekend, I was eager to be with him again. He invited me to go with him to a party at his former roommate's apartment in Pomona. I asked him to go to my Nana and Papa's house for Thanksgiving for our next date. I didn't think about the idea that I was introducing him to the whole family so early in my relationship. Second date, yeah. You've already gotten drunk with my dad. Here's my mom. Here's my grandma. Here's my papa. Oh, here are my aunts and cousins and uncles. And hope you like them, because you're gonna have to deal with them for the rest of your life. We also went to a couple drive-in movies. 40 Pounds of Trouble. Dad remembered this one. He said it had Debbie Reynolds, and he also said it was kind of awful. And The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I remembered this one. This is typical dad thing. Oh, yeah, we want to go out on a date. Hey, let's go see a Clint Eastwood movie. Let's go see a violent Clint Eastwood movie. That would be awesome. That'd be really great. Yeah, that's at least she knew what she was getting into. That's all I can say. But mostly we were together all the time. So by December, when my family decided to spend Christmas at a rented house in Lake Arrowhead, I couldn't stand not being with Jerry. My mom took me to the market phone booth in Blue Jay to call him and talk. I was in love and miserable without him. The big formal dance of the year at my school was called the Winter Whirl. It was held in January at a hotel. My mom made my formal. I assume that means the dress. I don't remember for sure, but I think we had just become engaged, but we had not picked out a ring yet. In February, Mom and Dad threw an engagement party at our house. We come to find out that, first of all, my mom's dad, my Papa Steve, he was not interested. He had nothing to do with the engagement party. He wanted to keep everything as small as possible. This was my grandmother, Maga, who set this up. And she didn't really let my mom and dad know. I mean, she let them know a few days ahead of time, but they weren't involved in it. They weren't planning it. They weren't really interested in having an engagement party. But for Maga, oh yeah, it was going to happen. And we were busy making wedding plans for a July wedding, meaning Maga and Mom were making plans for a July wedding because Maga wanted a big wedding, but Papa Steve did not. he was still paying for the last one. For Paula's wedding, he wasn't really interested in having another one, so he's like, "I'm still paying off the last one. Can we keep this small?" Maga says, "No, not going to do that. We're going to have a major wedding." Okay, okay. Soon our plans changed. That's right. You can figure it out. I mean, the wedding, they were planning on having the July wedding, but they ended up having an April wedding, and then I'm born in October. I'm not very good at math, but I could do that math. Soon our plans changed, and we decided not to do a big wedding, but to elope to Las Vegas. April 3rd, 1965, to be married at the Little White Chapel on the Strip. They said that Elvis wasn't an option. They couldn't get married by Elvis. Elvis, of course, was alive at that point, and maybe he could have come in and just done it. Not just a fake Elvis, but the real Elvis. But anyway, he didn't do that. They did say that they did have options. You could do Protestant or Catholic. I wonder if Jewish was an option. Probably Muslim wasn't an option in 1965. Anyway, but they chose the Protestant version. Anyway, and that's the end of the story. That's how it ends. That was the whole thing. It's just like, woo, all this build up, and suddenly, oh, our plans changed. We got married in Las Vegas in April. Okay, that's good. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Actually, hate to have nasty names labeled at me or something like that. Anyway, so okay, all right, and that's the story. That's the whole thing. Just thought I'd share that with you because that's similar to the reading that I did at my mom and dad's 50th anniversary when my mom and my dad were laughing so hard. My dad said that he started coughing, and we were afraid that maybe he was going to die. And my mom was laughing so hard that she couldn't breathe either. And so I just about killed my parents by reading this to them. But it's not my fault. My mom wrote it. I'm just reading it. Anyway. All right. Thanks.